collaboration is there. We have different departments, and for us as the technical people, we have other technical colleagues, and we sit on a monthly basis to share some of these challenges. For example, this is health, but even education has some issues. But like he said, their council sits once in 2 months. But for us, the technical people, we sit monthly to get reports. I hear from what is happening in education. For example, we may agree that maybe in a certain school X, the situation is too bad. Let's agree that we have a project there, and we collectively agree, and the project goes to that school. Right. Or maybe a certain community has a broken borehole, and we agree that let's fix that. Then we normally take our plans to their councils for approval. But we'll try to do the collaboration.
And the money that comes to fix the problem can actually, it's lots of times money is very narrow, and you can only do that with this money or something. Is there flexibility in the funding of these projects?
Yeah, the flexibility at times happens because, of course, there is a lot of, you want to convince. Like what I showed you, a shelter being under construction for the mothers. There was money which was going to another project. And I managed to convince my colleagues that we need to put a shed for the mothers. You look at them. And they agreed. So the flexibility is there depending on how the project is and how we, maybe at times you convince your colleagues and maybe make them appreciate that this now maybe is our priority. It happens. And of course the councils approve. We present to them that to us we think this is what we should do.
And when they bring them to council, we actually look at the demand. So it's at times demand driven. Where there is a lot of demand, we go there and do that and finish and then go to another place. You might find that we budgeted for example, for a toilet in a certain school. And then before that one gets a problem, for example, if it is not yet filled, because we have pit latrines. Another school tells us that their toilet is falling in. So we have to rush and go to that school and construct that toilet. Though we are not budgeting for it there. So it's a bit demand driven. But we are always flexible.
Yes, please.
I was just wondering, you were talking about the budget and how we have like a certain, you guys have a certain amount allotted for each one. How much money is bribing and like corruption a big problem, especially in the bottom, in the lower, it's like enforcement of like police officers and everything?
Unfortunately, we don't handle the police issues for us. We have enforcement, which is quite a small department. Police is handled by the central government. But of course, you have talked about the corruption. I can't say that corruption is not there. It's quite there. But of course, yes, we are there to do work. And work is done at the levels that we can manage. So it's not all that all the money that we get goes into such dubious actions or activities. We use that money and do work. And for example, there are very tough laws in Uganda. When you are caught in such acts like corruption, you are imprisoned for years. And many people are now in jail because of taking money which they are not supposed to take. So people are now starting to realize that they have to work for the community, not for themselves as families. Yes.
So has urbanization been an issue in some people? I mean, just assuming that we there for many years. Or John, I mean, it's, because that is one of the questions.
No, one of the things I was thinking about was University Avenue and traffic. That as a community, we have now traffic management, traffic jams are big problems, and the roads are inadequate. And so one solution we have is this major artery, University Avenue, just going in one direction. But then you have to have another big road that goes in the other direction. And yet it's still a danger that I think every year at least 2 people are killed on this street being hit by vehicles. So we've alleviated the problem, but we just, traffic is certainly one. And as we have more housing and increase the density of the city, the traffic density will increase as well. Now everyone in Madison thinks people are going to bicycle. As an alternative. And we have one of our advocates of bicycling here, active transportation, more buses, use, right? And people even bicycle in the winter. They're being encouraged to do that, which I think is dangerous.
Motorcycle?
Students that scooters without wearing helmets or adequate clothing.
Right.
I was hearing about the recent Chinese investment in a large East African railway network, trains that will start in Mombasa and move through Nairobi and eventually get to Uganda. I'm wondering how you anticipate or predict this new transportation development to either influence migratory patterns into cities or even from outside Uganda into Uganda, and how that may affect urban crowding and others, and some of the other issues you mentioned with urbanization.
Of course, I think by the time we came in, those agreements had just been signed. We are waiting to see what comes out of that. Maybe in addition to that, what is happening is that Mukono and the Kampala and the surrounding neighbors, they want to, government is still looking at ways of having what you call Kampala metropolitan area, so that our planning somehow is coordinated with the Kampala, because we are like suburbs, and they are still imagining how it can work, so that some of these challenges like transport is solved. That maybe we reduce these motorcycles, reduce the vans, and maybe have the buses, but it is still under planning and people coming in with different ideas. But we hope if it goes through, because it is still a bit early and people have a lot of discussion going on. We believe if it works out, maybe some of the transport issues will be solved.
And the time taken of transporting goods from Mombasa to different areas will be now gone, because a trailer man, a truck driver from Mombasa takes days, at times weeks, transporting on that road from Mombasa to Kenya, Nairobi, then to Kampala, from Kampala to Rwanda, from Rwanda maybe to Zaire. It's a lot of long journeys, a lot of time. And if that system is put in place, time will be reduced and people will be getting services quicker than they have been getting. So it's quite an advantage.
And maybe in addition to what he's saying, we have those big trucks still competing on the narrow roads. So if the rail transport is developed, most of the cargo will be by railway, and the big trucks will be off the roads to decongest the roads.
I'm wondering if any of you have ever had the opportunity to visit Kigali.
Yeah.
And if you have, one thing I noticed between Kigali and Kampala is that Kigali seems to be very well organized, safe. The transportation networks seem even a bit more safe. The streets, everything seems very clean and well organized. And I know that Rwanda also suffers from some of the common resource limitation problems that you face in Uganda. And so I was just wondering why you think Kigali has maybe been more effective in making those decisions about urbanization in Kigali as opposed to places in urban areas around Uganda, and whether you've learned any lessons from Kigali that you think could apply to Uganda.
Yeah. Maybe I have not been to Kigali, but for example, on the health part of it, what Rwanda has done, they have implemented a health insurance scheme, which is helping them, and the money is managed by the districts to improve their health sector, which is not yet happening in Uganda. Uganda is still studying which model is the best. That's what I know on the side of health. So for them, every individual, every family pays, but the money is managed in that locality, so they are able to buy ambulances, fuel them, maybe improve the health infrastructure, pay their health workers a little better, and that's how they have improved their health system. But on the other side of infrastructure, I think maybe it was their prioritization, and after the wars, I think they've not had, I think maybe more external wars and whatever, but maybe the priority for them as a country, infrastructure was their priority. Uganda is also coming up. I think in the last year, government has put some more money in infrastructure, in the roads. And I think even in Kampala now, I think you told us you have just come from Uganda. You must have seen that it is a little better than 2 years back. So Uganda is also beginning to focus on the roads. And maybe Uganda is bigger than Rwanda. They have to work on a big, so many roads, and that can also be an issue. Rwanda is a bit small.
No, if I could add on some small slide. Partly, we politicians have to carry the blame in Uganda. In Rwanda, it's at times a one-man's decision. That is the president. If the president says he has said, and what he has said has to be done. But in Uganda, we go through different levels. For example, as I told you, we have a division, we have a district. So, as you bring in issues, policies, other people come in and fight them. You get me? So you find at times things like garbage management, people littering all around, cannot work effectively. Because we put there policies, we have passed these resolutions, we have passed bylaws, we have passed ordinances, which have not worked. Because you can't effect them. If you say, you tell your enforcement to go and arrest, somebody else goes and removes that person from the police or from the prison, then he takes that person back to the community as a hero. And you know, we are all at times looking for votes. And then tomorrow you say, I'm failing, these people will not vote me again in the office. Then you keep quiet and they silence you there and then. So politicians probably have to be blamed for some issues that are not happening. So you see, Kampala is now coming up. It's scaling up, for example, in sanitation matter issues. In Kampala now, it is an offense, one, if you go and buy from a hawker. You get arrested. They don't arrest the hawker, but they arrest you who is buying. Two, if you litter around, if you throw a polythene bag, if you throw a trash anywhere, they arrest you. Three, if they catch you passing via their gardens. Because it used to happen. Somebody is coming up, passing through a garden, going anywhere, and if they arrest you now, it's an offense, you are taken to Luzira in prison. So in Kampala, they are, and they have removed many of these vendors from the streets. They are no longer there. But I think one time it is also coming to Mukono because Kampala is expanding to Kayunga district, to Mukono district, and other districts. So we think, as it is headed by the director, because now they are reducing on the politics in Kampala, and now the director heads, and you see the director is a nominee of the president. He nominates, he doesn't go in this politics of campaigning and what. So the director is now directing issues and things are being done. So we think if they come to Mukono and other districts, things will normalize, but it needs some time.
Okay, so at that note, I think we should thank our guests for sharing. And then we can spend a little bit more time interacting with seminar.